Hi again, this is Mark or MarqueeCrew, and I'm going to show you the final finishing touches on our macro. So we're looking at the contains enlist macro. We've done a lot of work with setting up the workflow process itself, about creating the interface tools and actions. Now let's take a look at the interface designer. Now, in all honesty, when I built the macro, I had the interface designer up the entire time, and I was doing this interface design work along with the building of the macro. But for training purposes, I've separated that interface designer piece out. So in a designer interface, I'm going to show you a new workflow where the workflow itself, I'm going to say, is a macro. And as soon as I change this to a macro, I now have a question tab here. And what we can do is I had a text box being added, and now you can see a text box here. I have, say, a drop down, and doesn't matter where I put this tool, by the way. I can drop that drop down tool here, and now I see a drop down. I can put another text box on, and now I see a text box. It's always going to be the last item entered onto the canvas is going to be at the bottom. I can put in a checkbox and another drop down, and now I have a question, and I can take a look here at the test view of this, and this is the way my interface is going to look. And I will want to now pretty that up. Questions itself, I like to put in there configuration, especially if it's only a single tab. You could have something like input, and in the configuration I can add another tab, and in that other tab it could be output. And I could take something that was on this first tab, like this drop, and I can move it to the next tab and move it to the output tab. Or I could move from something from the output tab to the input, and I can delete the tab output, and I can rename input to configuration. One of the other things I can do is I can add a group box, and I like to put in groups. And here I could put in something like instructions. And I don't want it at the bottom. I'm going to put that at the top. And now I can add in a label. Do this, else you will not have done this. And I can continue to type. I'm not that fast of a typist. Add that data here. I'm just touching, and now I've now got instructions that are ready to move up and move those into that group box. And so if I wanted to go and add another set of, or paragraph, or a couple of sentences, I can do that as well.
Call from Martin John.
Pardon me. Now I can move that as well up into these instructions. And that's the way that I'm going to make the appearance of instructions with these labels involved. Taking that same approach, I can go and put these other boxes and checkboxes and drop downs together, and I can even put groups of items together into a single. So I have a checkbox here where I can, within that checkbox, have the drop down. So let's take a look at our macro and see what I've actually done. I've got a group box here for instructions with multiple labels inside of it. Then I've got the field, the search field, which as I click here, you can see where those tools are on the canvas. So the search field is here, followed by some instructions around that search field. The next target terms are here, and then there's a text to be displayed and a delimiter. Then I have case insensitive, which was a checkbox. Then I have another, which was the filter output, which it's made it a group itself. So within the filter output group, I've taken the find results and moved that inside of the filter output so that when we're testing this and you click on filter output, you can now see the next question. Otherwise, it's not visible. Right here is the layout view of the interface designer. This test view is there to be able to, instead of having to switch over to a macro, be able to see what the macro will look like. I've also put in this copyright statement as a label. This brings you up to date with the macro itself, but let's take a look at this properties wrench. In the properties wrench, you can either have a standard icon, or you can go and download or create, if you're artistic, a custom icon. They're looking for a PNG or JPEG. You need something that's a relatively small file size. So if you've got a really intricate picture that's 1 meg of picture, it's wrong choice for the icon. You also have the ability to define a hyperlink for a help file. And while I do have some things in there on the canvas that are unique, this icon for my company, the logo MarqueeCrew itself, I'm going to close the interface designer. What I've done there is it's actually a comment tool that I took the shape away from it, and then I've got the background image being my logo itself. The workflow itself was a macro, and there's meta information. So the meta information includes the copyright, and I guess I could update that to 2018, and the company name, if I want to be proper about it, is MarqueeCrew Inc. And I can set that to being the default, or remember it now forevermore. That is the default author. The tool palette that I'd like to be able to save this with, this category name could just be macro, it could be custom macro. Things that I would put in there for search tag would be contains, maybe macro, target, in, and I'm going to use the file name of contains in list, and I'm going to save this. So now in another workflow, especially while I have this open, I can right click, find tool, I can right click, insert macro, contains in list, and it's there and it's ready to go. Otherwise, will put it into a directory so that I can find all of my macros. But that contains in list. I would like to make that available to other users at Alteryx. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and File, Save As to Alteryx Gallery. I'm going to sign into the gallery. And I'm going to save that workflow. This is now going to be in my private area of the Alteryx gallery. I'm going to allow users to download that. I'm going to add a tag of macro to help categorize the app. And I'm going to allow this to be put into the public gallery.